Our state has some incredible problems. My name is Lynn Hinderaker. I'm here to talk about that with you and talk about the trends that have shaped this state and dragged us in one direction or another. We're not really we're not realizing the dream we had way back in the early 2000s or even around 2008 or 9 or 10. My name is Lynn Hinderaker. Welcome to WowBiz Nebraska. We're going to get it on right now. Omaha has been named the #1 place in America to move to live and work inside of. I'm so excited to be telling you this. And by the way, I took it off of the Omaha World Herald. Livonia Goodman mentioned this as she also announced her involvement in running for city council there in North Omaha. And of course, Juanita Johnson said the same thing. Congratulations to both you ladies. And we are excited about that award. And I couldn't be happier because we've been talking about how Nebraska and Omaha in particular needs to do some things to attract workers. And obviously we're on track there. So good for them, good for everybody. By the way, you're taking a look here at a piece of art that is also a symbol of architecture and what we'd like to see a lot more of here in the city of Omaha. What you see is urban down here. This area below obviously is aluminum. It's very kind of cool and hip and metallic and synthetic. And of course the rough wood right here. So it's urban and natural. You need to know a little bit about urban natural architecture, and this is a great example of that. Obviously, interior and exterior also can be utilized, putting wood and metal together, wood and glass and so on. Very exciting. It does evoke the release of dopamine in the human brain when we all see these two opposite things pulled together. So that's pretty exciting news, and I encourage you to be sensitive to urban natural design, especially now as Omaha positions itself to be paramount, shall we say, across the entire country. Now, I want to chat with you a little bit about a new product and something that you can think about. You know, people say to me, how does a product go from just a concept or a thought to being on the shelf? So I'm going to show you something right here. This is something that I don't think anybody has seen before, although I could be wrong about that, I guess. But what we're talking about here, I took did some research in Chicago, downtown Chicago a few years back, and chatted with some folks about cologne, men's cologne in particular. I was working for a manufacturer of men's cologne, and I heard a lot of people tell me at that time they carry around a bottle of cologne in their car, glove compartment and so on, and sometimes they break, frankly, and it's kind of a mess, as you can imagine. So it occurred to me, and I chatted with a couple of the people I was interviewing right on the streets, right on the Wacker Street there in Chicago. I said, what if there was some kind of a soft package, kind of like the cloth you get at a barbecue restaurant, and so it wouldn't break, obviously, and it has maybe one swipe or one piece of fabric inside that's very porous, of course, and has a particular fragrant or cologne right there inside of the package. You carry it around in your car or wherever you run around, and you kind of rip off the top and wipe it on your hands, your clothes, whatever it is, and all of a sudden I'm talking to men right now, although this could certainly apply to women as well, and you smell great, and you don't have to carry around bottles, heavy, clunky bottles of cologne. Now, this is a fascinating idea. It's very hip and kind of in with a portable, mobile approach towards life that we all have, and you can see it right here. Here's our display, and I named all three of these colognes, by the way. You can see there's Covert, which we think is perfect for a nightclub kind of environment, a place where you might utilize that cologne, have it in your pocket, pull it out, put it on, and be smelling really good in a nightclub environment. Then we have Trillion here, which speaks of status and upscale and money and those kinds of things. That's a different fragrance, of course. And then right here we have Helios, and Helios is kind of like a Manhattan, or not a Manhattan, excuse me, Mediterranean, really a European, Greece, Italy, maybe a nudist colony, that kind of environment. And so you see three very different personalities that are, that are demonstrated right here with these packages and these colognes. They would probably best sell in convenience stores, although theft would be an issue. So you have to cover it a little bit with some plastic lock it, and of course that would hurt sales dramatically. So there are some issues here. It's not a done deal, but it's a very exciting idea. A lot of people do not spend money on colognes. They're a little bit expensive, sometimes $40, $50 or more, but you certainly could utilize them in the car. Isn't that exciting? I think it's exciting, and somebody's going to want to finance that with us. Premium men's cologne to go. And you see some of the display merchandising stuff right there. So you show this to financiers, you show this to the convenience store industry in particular, and my guess is this will be a winner eventually. You'll see it around somewhere. Don't forget those 3 names that are on that cologne package. All right. Listen, I mentioned this to you a little bit earlier. I'm very excited to talk to you about the sponsor for WowBiz Nebraska here today, and that is Audio Click. Now, you've heard of speech recognition before, I'm sure, but we're talking now about adapting speech recognition, making it real easy to utilize, simply leaning forward and speaking into a computer screen. That's it. That's all there is to it. For 60 seconds, perhaps, or even longer if required. And all of a sudden, people, and this is, I got to act this out. I mean, I've seen it now. People talk to me about it. They say, when I first heard somebody talking to me on my laptop, and they'd sent me emails in the past now and then, and they were just like everybody else's, and all of a sudden, I hear this voice, and it's nuanced, it's emotional, there's laughter there, and I'm just riveted. It's an incredible thing. I know it sounds kind of simplistic. And oh, by the way, on the screen down at the very bottom, all the words also that whoever is talking to me, I don't know who it is, but whoever is talking to me, I can read it here as well. So it's engaging, but then when you look below, it also increases memorability. So it's fun to listen to, it's real, it's human. And then at the bottom, you can certainly take a look at some of the words or ideas that were shared. It's 60 seconds, but it can be far more than that as well. Typically, it'll go to one person, but it could go to an unlimited number of people as well. I'm talking now about something that will change, I don't want to say change the world, but you know how you felt when you first saw the internet. You know what you were thinking about when you first did your first email. This would be years and years ago. We are now at a break point, a benchmark, when Audio Click is being released on the land, and we're going to see a lot of new action, a lot of people paying a lot more attention to their emails when they hear somebody who has a pleasant voice, intelligent, and knows how to speak to the heart, not just write another email. So there you go, Audio Click. Look for it. You're going to hear all about it soon. But it really is speech recognition technology that's been twisted and tweaked a little bit, made easy to use. All right. Hey, listen, before I get into the back end of the show, I do want to say a couple, 2 or 3 personal things. My wife and I celebrated our 40th wedding anniversary recently. We had a big party in our home. It was an incredible moment for me, an incredible moment, of course, for her. And it was a really exciting, upbeat celebration. I just wanted to tell her I love her and thank you so much for coming to the party. The other thing is that we just had a brand new baby. The little baby is 5 pounds, very small child. Now she's 6 pounds and so on, so we're excited. Her name is Juliana, and we're thrilled to have her. And I've already made up a song about Juliana, so there you go. All right. Anyway, we talk about a personal note here. I'm gonna move into a story that's going to be hard for you to believe, and some people will say, I don't know if I can buy all that or believe it or whatever. Another person said, you know, Lynn, this is historical. What you're sharing with me right now is historical. It has to do with an interaction that I had with a global magazine that has only psychotherapists around the entire world that read this particular publication. So here's the story, and I hope that you can understand where I'm coming from. It should be a releasing and a positive feeling for you, but who knows what'll happen. Anyway, this is a number of years ago. I lived in a different home. It was the afternoon. I was tired. I don't know, for some reason I was kind of sleepy. So I went up to my bedroom, and next to that I had a recliner chair, and I decided to just kind of flop down in the recliner chair, and I closed my eyes. Now, I did not go to sleep. This is an important thing for you to understand. but I was certainly not awake, but I was not asleep, all right? And this is a special area of consciousness, I guess, in human beings that you might already know about. But anyway, so as I kind of sunk into this, this state of mind, I guess is all I can say, or type of consciousness, in my mind, I was in talking to a psychotherapist. I was in a therapist's office. And apparently I'd had a meeting with him before and asked him to take me in and talk to me and provide counsel and all that. So that preceded this particular event. And I was sitting on a sofa in a beautiful office. He was sitting in a chair right in front of me. But I was so sad in this particular situation that I just had my hands down on my knees and so on. I was very sad. And I poured out my heart to this gentleman. Very unusual story here. And he listened, and he had this unusual quality where no matter what I told him that was negative and my life was terrible and this one didn't work and this didn't happen, all kinds of things, which I'll give you the details in a minute, but he didn't see anything bad about any of them. And this is the key moment that I want everybody who's watching this to think about. So the first thing I told him, I said, and again, my head was down. I just want to emphasize that. It was on my knees. I just was like this. I think I cried a little bit now and then during this whole thing. It was kind of a confession. And I said, when I used to take my family to church. And I would go to church and I would sit there, and everybody's in the church and they're singing their songs and their hymns and whatever they're doing. And I became so emotional as I was sitting there that I had to excuse myself. And I did. And I walked out to the aisle and went down the basement and had to pull myself together. It was a very emotional thing for me, but I can't tell you how or why exactly at this point. And so I told this gentleman this, and I said it was just really a very embarrassing thing for me to have to go through. He said, well, I see, interesting. And I said, and then it happened a little bit later in the whole service again. They're all standing up there singing, they're listening to his sermon, whatever they're doing. And I'm sitting there with my children and my wife, And I had to excuse myself. Again, I felt kind of a welling up, a real emotional situation. So I had to excuse myself again and walk out the back of the church, the lectern and so on. And I said, I just don't know what the deal was there. And it still bothers me to this day. And he goes, really? He says, because here's the thing, Lynn. He says, all these people, every Sunday they go to church, and they listen and they sing together and they smile and so on and so forth. But I would tell you that you may be the only person in the entire church that was actually feeling a deep spiritual connectivity with God. You may be feeling it in a way that nobody else in the entire church was feeling it. And that would be my sense. You are a lucky man. You were receiving some kind of energetic influence, and it was going into your heart, and you are a lucky man. There's probably nobody else in that entire service that had the experience you had. Well, I didn't know what to think about that. I hadn't thought about that, And I kind of sat there for a long time. I kept my head down. He says, now, Lynn, he said, didn't you tell me at our initial meeting, he said, didn't you tell me when you were a kid in high school that you played in a lot of you were the star in all the plays, the high school plays. There were 7 or 8 of them, and you were always the actor and the person that was on camera or whatever they did there in the play. And you enjoyed doing that. You were very good at it, right? Didn't you tell me that? I said, yeah, I'd forgotten about that. I don't know. You wanted my past, so I chatted with you about that. They said, yeah, I remember this, see? And he said, I'm going to tell you something else. He said, you have the ability, and you know that you do because of what you just shared with me at that last session, to wear your emotions on your sleeves. Now, actors, the best actors, that's what they do, right? They have this unusual ability. They're not afraid to reveal their emotions. Isn't that correct, Lynn? I said, yeah, I guess you're right. He says, you have an unusual ability. You showed your emotions. You are the person you are. You see, you're enacting everything that you've been given to be. Well, these were heavy revelations for me, but I was inspired by this guy. He seemed to know me extremely well, and just like that, he could interpret everything I said in a positive fashion. It blew my mind. So I'm sitting there and he gets up. I could see him, his shoes down there as I had my head down. His shoes, and he got up and he went to the back of his office and got some coffee or whatever, and he came back and sat down quietly. And he had this sport coat on, like a Tattersall sport coat. And I could see just out of the corner of my eye when he moved his arm, the Tattersall pattern moved, of course, on his elbow, but it was almost like there was energy. It was really unusual because it was like the whole arm was energetic. It wasn't just a sleeve on a jacket. There was something going up and down in his arms, or at least that's how it looked to me in that as I snatched a quick look. But it was overwhelming because he had given me so much positive feedback. And of course, I had all this negative attitude and the negative vibes and so on. I didn't quite know what to think, you know. But I do know this. I know that he was a good man. He was helping me, and he was lifting me up, and he was sharing some kind of an intellectual perspective that was really good, you know, really good. Right. And so at this moment, my eyes are kind of dried now, and I was no longer leaning down, and I slowly lifted my eyes up, right? Like anybody would at this, after 15, 20 minutes of this, and I lifted my eyes up, and the person I saw, you're not going to believe what I'm saying. The person I saw was me. He was me. He looked a little different, a little older, a little calmer, a little more relaxed, like he really had it together. But there's no doubt it was me talking to me. Now, I want you to just think deeply about this. Take this in, and what I'm sharing with you right now. This is consistent with books, things you've read about this higher self, right? We also go out to businesses and we talk to them about higher purpose, don't we? But this was higher self. It was almost like there was somebody inside of me that was just waiting to help me succeed. I know this sounds absolutely crazy. And by the way, inside of the context of business, this actually is important to business. Especially when you talk about a boss, somebody who is connected to maybe something broader. You really do want a boss or an owner to be sensitive, maybe not to this level, but something along these lines where you're kind of penetrating your own consciousness, you're watching yourself, and I've never done that before, okay? And I was watching myself watch myself, so to speak. Now, this is a very interesting thing because it stuck with me, obviously. And then I found myself, and this is now months later. I hadn't thought much about this. And I ended up talking to the publisher and editor of a magazine called The Science of Psychotherapy. It's published out of Australia. Don't ask me how I had this conversation, but somehow I found myself talking to him about this thing. And he said, you know, Lynn, he said, please write that up. I'd like you to write the whole thing down, write the story. He said, I'd be very interested in seeing it. So he did. And I sent it to Australia, to his offices. And he got back to me pretty quickly a few days later, and he said, look, we want to publish this in our magazine. And I said, really? I mean, I'm a businessman in Omaha, Nebraska. I mean, I don't know. And he said, here's the deal. He says, when you're in that state of consciousness and you saw yourself guiding yourself, he says, this is very, very similar to Milton Erickson's hypnosis theory, shall we say. He was kind of the father of modern day hypnosis. The guy's name is Milton Erickson. Milton Erickson also was a pioneer for neuro-linguistic programming. When you talk to Tony Robbins, who's a fantastic speaker, as you know, he talks a lot about NLP or neuro-linguistic programming, all coming away from this gentleman named Milton Erickson back in the 50s and 60s, I believe. Anyways, he said, what you're confessing to or explaining to people in your experience is exactly what Milton Erickson tried to evoke from his patients way back when he was a counselor and a therapist. He said, it's a very positive thing, And it's something that's very popular to be discussed amongst all the people that read our magazine around the world. He said, so with your permission, I'd like to utilize this story, word for word, in our magazine. I said, really? He said, yeah. And he said, Lynn, here's the thing. We've never published a business person's submission ever before. It's kind of a closed group, the psychotherapists, you know, that's a whole different world. But what you're sharing in this essay and what you had in your experience, he said, is very relevant to us. And so we want to be able to publish this story. And I said, well, sure, thank you so much. I'm flattered, et cetera, et cetera. Well, anyway, so I had to put a title on, of course, this whole thing. And I hope I can say this correctly, but the moment, right, I remember using the word, the moment as I looked up and I saw him and I saw myself, and he was speaking to me from some kind of an enlightened or higher perch, shall we say. The phrase, I want to say it right, the moment, the magic, because it certainly was magical, and I can't, and the mirror, of course, the mirror. That's what it was. It was a mirror psychologically. It all took place while I'm laying on my recliner. And the mirror, the magic, and the moment. I think it was in that order. But anyway, the bottom line is this. We all, regardless of our business connections and our desires to achieve and success and all these kinds of things, we have to be aware that there's another dimension to our existence. As you get older, this kind of becomes a little more obvious, by the way. And so you want to lead with a certain amount of enlightenment, so to speak. You want to pass along the wisdom that either you accidentally got or you really did search for. But nevertheless, there's a whole new, emphasis today on, I would call spiritual psychology or philosophy, whatever you want to call it. But I guarantee you that Gen Y and Gen Z are looking for wise leaders, not just successful, snappy leaders. We want to make a lot of money, work hard, da-da-da-da-da. They know all about that, but they're looking for something higher and something more personal. All right, so there's my big, long story about that. Thank you so very much for watching this unusual episode of WowBiz Nebraska. And by the way, let's again be happy about the Forbes announcement about Omaha, Nebraska. We are thrilled for economic developers, mayors, leaders. Thank you so much for watching this show. We'll see you again. My name is Lynn Hinderaker. Thank you so much.